Hello and welcome to a new season of the iTnews podcast. We begin this year by speaking to Aussie Broadband's head of cloud and SRE, Ben O'Shea. Eagle-eyed IT News readers and listeners might remember Ben's appearance at Cisco Live in 2024, when he revealed work that was underway to build a new cloud platform for Aussie Broadband's own internal use, and to retire older virtualisation and containerisation platforms. In this episode, we hear where that cloud platform is at a year on. We discuss Ben's role expansion to cover SRE, and we also hear about a recent change to the company's backup tooling. Maybe it'd be good just to have a background from you, looking at the way that your role has evolved in the past couple of years, because I know cloud has been consistent as your core remit, but you had transformation for a period as well, and I see now you've got site reliability engineering as well.
I came to Aussie Broadband to run the customer-facing cloud business. And I guess as part of the knowledge that I have in running those cloud platforms, when Aussie Broadband looked out across the technology environment and saw that it was a very complex kind of landscape, and we sort of decided, hey, we need our own cloud platform for our internal customers and business units to consume. My role evolves from a purely customer and outward facing type role to that inward cloud technology type thing. So the role evolved into inward-facing cloud platforms, which I think is what I was starting to talk about at Cisco Live a year ago when we were very early on the build of that platform and our technology transformation journey. As we got into our technology transformation and Aussie Broadband launched its Look to 28 strategy, we had the technology strategy that my boss Brad spoke about at our Investor Day last year. We looked at the breadth of the transformation that technology needed to undergo and all of the other things that I had going on. And I guess I decided to focus the transformation efforts that I would be doing around the cloud platform and around the way that we do our technology operations, and in transitioning the way that we do that towards modern site reliability engineering practices. Then we also had a gentleman by the name of Andrew Webster come into the team, and he took on the broader tech transformation type role.
It completely makes sense from a perspective that at some point transformation is going to cut across a huge number of areas of the business, and whether you want to be doing that or whether you want to be, if you come from this cloud domain, whether you want to be focused more on the technical aspects of it, I can see that makes sense.
Yeah, and look, I think for me personally, I've done a lot of platform engineering, architecture, product type work in my past. I haven't done any really operational type stuff since I was an engineer cutting my teeth. That as a challenge, I think was appealing to me to focus on that side of it.
So basically now your role is focused on both the external facing cloud products as well as internal facing cloud. So whole of cloud.
Whole of cloud, yeah.
And do they use the same stacks or are they completely different?
Completely different. So the customer-facing stuff, which came through acquisition of the over-the-wire business, Digital Sense business, very much targeted enterprise and government, so built on top of the VMware platform, which enterprise and government customers obviously have a lot of confidence in. We looked at our requirements when we were doing our internal cloud platform. And I guess there were just the sort of a few things playing out in that VMware Broadcom space that didn't really sit well with us. In terms of values alignment between us, it's a very values-led organization, and Broadcom and their approach to their customers and the technology industry in general. Pricing, obviously, to that being a telco, being in a commodity business, managing our underlying costs is imperative to staying competitive and being able to deliver the required shareholder returns and margins that we need to deliver. We also are leaning heavily towards containerisation rather than traditional virtual machines virtualisation. So VMware, definitely not a market leader in that space. So we went out, we did an RFI, we landed on the SUSE cloud platform stack, which is Rancher sitting on top of KubeVirt for our platform.
And where's that platform at? Is it completely launched now and live?
The initial tranche of work to build that platform out is complete. So we've got our 2 core sites and our 2 edge sites, which was the initial deployment. We will expand that over the coming years as we start to migrate workloads off of those legacy systems, which is the piece of work that we're going through at the moment. We will start expanding those core sites, and I think we're going to end up about 18 to 20 edges when we get to the end.
Initially, I think the plan was going to be infrastructure as a service and container as a service.
Yeah,
And then you were
that's
going to
right.
branch out into sort of database as a service, API management, other things. Is that still the trajectory of the program?
I mean, that's very much where things are headed. So, infrastructure as a service and containerisation as a service is what's going live now. We recently have been focused on a piece of work driving those database as a service and those API management pieces. So, those things are very much actively being worked on and will mature and evolve over the coming months as that piece of work goes live.
Can you talk a little bit about this transition plan? I guess you mentioned it just briefly there. So in terms of workload migration, have you got like a cadence of workloads that you're planning to transition across, or has that started, or have you got anything on there at the moment completely?
We do have, I guess, what we would class as non-critical production type stuff. So more of your infrastructure support systems, the systems that drive or orchestrate our automations and stuff like that. Those are running on there at the moment. And we're working with our different business stakeholders at the moment around what are your applications and how do we prioritize and sequence those. So exiting our internal VMware platforms is a priority for us. We're wanting to, I guess, avoid renewals, upgrades of a platform that we're not going to invest in going forward. And then we will be taking a risk-based approach to those additional migrations once we've exited those VMware platforms. So what is the oldest, what's coming up for a life cycle, what's giving us headaches from a compliance perspective, and those will be prioritized. And we'll be looking at opportunities, I guess, to modernize some of those going forward where it makes sense and move them from potentially legacy virtual machine type stacks into containerized type approach.
Okay, so it's based on whatever the underlying infrastructure is and the stage of the life cycle is in terms of when that is coming up for renewal is one thing, but also I guess the business's needs and evolving needs in terms of the way that the application stack currently sits and whether you need to modernize certain bits for some of the more customer facing work.
Yeah, that's right. And we've got the mandate at the business at the moment that new workloads, our default position is that they are deployed on the new platform so that we're not making that migration job bigger for ourselves and constantly chasing our tail.
Yeah, and I think it's a fairly standard cloud migration path in terms of non-critical stuff first, work that stuff out, make sure it all sits well before you start to work on the stuff that's really going to affect more of the core operations or potentially be disruptive if anything went wrong. You want to be able to have everything bedded down.
That's right. You can test all that you want in a lab and you can design test plans that cover this and cover that. But for me, the real test is run some stuff on here for a period of time and all of those things that we didn't think about get teased out and we can deal with those things.
And because you've done this yourselves and you're not relying on public cloud, I assume that the cost isn't necessarily as big a problem as perhaps in a public cloud ecosystem. And so you're not going to have to focus too much on the FinOps sides of things. This has all been done in the business case planning.
Yeah. I mean, very early on in the piece when we did the business case, the hyperscaler was just ruled out just with the sheer volume and scale of things that we had. And also given that there is a lot of legacy virtual machine type architectures, those things just aren't super cost effective to run at telco scale in AWS or Azure.
So the premise of this conversation was around use of Veeam. I don't know where this fits into the broader program of work. So maybe do you want to just give us a bit of a background about where this fits into the jigsaw?
Veeam was not a part of our original solution. We did look at that early on in the piece and it probably didn't have some of the things that we were looking for at the time. And hats off to those guys. They really matured that platform in that 12-month period between when we initially looked at it and then when we came back to it. We had a different backup platform, which I won't mention it by name. We'd gone down a particular road and we weren't seeing the performance at scale that we needed to see with that backup. That we were experiencing a high rate of failures. The scheduler just simply wasn't coping with the number of different schedules and the frequency, which we were protecting some of the workloads. And it became apparent that it just wasn't going to be a workable situation going forward. So we thought, well, we've got to do something, right? We can't back up these workloads. Let's go back. We had ongoing relationships with Veeam anyway as part of the customer cloud business. So we've been working with JB and the account team there a lot and was just in one of our catch shops mentioning some of the challenges that we'd had. And she said, hey, take another look at this. It might be able to help. Spoke to my internal technical team and said, look, I know we ruled this out early on in the piece. However, the Veeam guys are telling me that they've added a lot of new functionality and features and addressed a lot of the shortcomings that we had reservations about at the time. We were supported really well by Veeam to run a small scale proof of concept on our legacy platforms. That was really, really positive. And then a month before go live, we made the decision to pull the trigger and put Veeam in. And we were able to get it deployed in a couple of weeks, everything migrated within the month. And we now run not only our next generation cloud platform on that Veeam custom solution, but also the legacy Kate's platforms and the legacy environments are protected by it as well. And we've seen a big improvement in those legacy environments and just the backup windows reduced by about a third. So that's really, really impressive.
Just to step back, so pre all the internal cloud platform, how were you doing backups? Were you using the other vendors' equipment or something else entirely?
It was a mixture, like a real mishmash, as you would expect through environments that have evolved organically over time and come through multiple acquisitions. We had some Commvault, we had some Valero, all in the mix. The overheads that you get with managing those number of different platforms was something that we wanted to address as well. Any opportunity to make that technical environment a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more simple, a little bit more efficient, we certainly welcome.
Yeah, so consolidation was always on the cards.
Yeah, that's right.
Then it was just a matter of proving out the capability of whichever platform you were able to. And so just so I understand, because you obviously implemented the other solution to a point where you were able to test it and try and get it up to speed. Is there particular kind of challenges with backup within a telecommunications environment that cause particularly high volumes of data movement for a backup scenario?
From the telco specific side, it's, I guess, compliance. We need to make sure that we're meeting all of our regulatory obligations in terms of data protection and data retention. And that certainly does drive the volume. But I think it's more so just the size of the environment that we had. The stuff that grew organically through ABB, there was the stuff that came from Over the Wire. Over the Wire themselves had acquired about 7 or 8 different businesses. There was just a lot of technology landscape there that needed to be protected. And look, as we're going through these migrations projects, we'll be asking ourselves, do we need all of these things and can they be consolidated? But I guess the landscape that we had to protect was vast, and that is a challenge in itself.
How much of the Veeam stack are you using from a backup perspective? Are you using some of the more advanced stuff around sort of the intelligence and the AI and ML stuff, or are you using it mainly the core functionalities?
Mainly the core functionalities at the moment, but moving into leveraging those additional, more intelligent features is definitely on the cards and will happen, I guess, over the course of the next 6 to 12 months.
I should probably ask about site reliability engineering as well. We did touch on this briefly earlier. If you could just tell me a little bit about the site reliability engineering side of things. Is this a new capability or relatively new capability within the organization, or were there aspects of this that just weren't called SRE before and are now being brought together?
A little bit of both. So we did have some people in the business that had the title of SRE, but there was no real centralized push to adopt SRE practices and principles. It was more like, hey, the dev team need an SRE to do their infrastructure things because they're developers. This is now a recognition of, I guess, the value that SRE practices and principles can bring to operations in terms of reliability, efficiency. And those are things that we want to make pervasive in the way that we do IT in Aussie Broadband so that we can deliver a far better, more resilient, more reliable service to our customers.
How have you gone about establishing that part of your remit? Have you gone through and documented some of the stuff that the existing SREs were doing within their certain domains, and you're now trying to apply that, as you say, more pervasively across different technical functions? How's it evolving?
We brought in an SRE leader to establish our SRE capability, and we've got some roles in market as well to grow that function. We're currently looking at internal transfers as well, and that person and the team that we're starting to slowly build out is meeting with all of our key technology and business stakeholders, understanding what their reliability needs are. We've launched an internal community of practice where people who are interested in availability and how we can improve availability and reliability can come together and share ideas and challenges. We're increasing the awareness of that internally, and that's helping us to promote the value that SRE can bring.
How big is this team underneath you now in terms of cloud and SRE?
I've got traditional operations, which is about 15 or so. I've got SRE, which we're just building out, which is 2 or 3 heads at the moment, but that will grow over time. And the customer-facing cloud, I think, is about 35 to 40 people from memory.
Just finally, as a question, Just wondering what's next for you and for your core function. Obviously, there's a lot of continuity in terms of the progression of the build of the internal platform, in terms of establishing or formalizing the SRE function. But if you just want to give me a sense of what's really exciting you.
Driving adoption of that platform is very much high priority for me, and launching the SRE piece and really undergoing the people and the organizational change around that and the opportunities that brings. That's what's exciting me at the moment. It is a pretty big change for us to do things in that fashion. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's the episode for this fortnight. Stay tuned for the next episode, and for all the latest headlines and happenings in Australian technology news, head over to iTnews.com.au.